Let's talk some Aggie baseball. Nice victory yesterday, a nice victory over the weekend. D1Baseball's Kendall Rogers joining us here on the Buppies Catering Hotline. Kendall, hello, sir.
Hey, how's it going, buddy?
It's going all right, man. So, kind of like what you guys are saying about my A&M baseball team. Kind of like it.
Yeah, how about that? It's just really interesting how college baseball can go. And I remember, you know, before the Tennessee series, I think we sat on here, and I think you had asked me, like, hey, are you pretty much kind of done with this season? Like, do you kind of feel like this team has no chance to turn it around? And at the time, we kind of felt like, no, it doesn't look like they're going to turn this around. But, college baseball is a funny game. You think back to Oregon State 17, they won the national championship when they were struggling for most of the year. Virginia back in 15 struggled much of the year, won the championship. Of course, Ole Miss. And then, Fullerton, I always think back to the Fullerton team in 04. They were one game over 500, on April 20th. And they end up winning the national championship. So there's always, a team here and there every few years that, for whatever reason, it just takes them half the season to kind of figure themselves out. And that seems to be the case with this A&M team.
Kendall, help me on this one, because this might be a dumb question, but like when you guys are projecting where teams are, seed-wise and whatnot, is that based on if the season ended today? Or look, I'm looking at what they still have ahead, and if they win this series, lose this series, kind of like, the projections, that's where they land.
Yeah, it's kind of a mix of both. I mean, we look heavily at the current state, but we also kind of look ahead a little bit. Like, for instance, we have Mississippi State out this week because we just kind of looked ahead at their schedule and said, hey, they're at, 6 conference wins. It's just a really difficult pathway to get to 13. So there's a little bit of looking ahead. But what's really interesting for this A&M team is if you look ahead, if you want to get very bullish here, if they win this series this weekend, I mean, this sounds insane considering where they were, but I mean, they are an LSU series away, or a series win away, or a Georgia series win away from probably hosting, which is kind of crazy.
That's a crazy thought. Okay. So let's kind of look at this weekend, and it's going to be crazy. We knew it was going to be crazy regardless, right? But now I feel like there's the added element to where, like, we all were projecting what it could look like months ago, right? When Schloss left, hey, you're going to have a really good Texas team and maybe the number one team in the country in Texas A&M taking on their former coach. And it was already going to be crazy. Throw in the fact that Texas is now number one. Throw in that A&M was already considered done for the season. There's no way they're going to make the tournament. And now they are amongst the hottest teams in baseball. Just talk about the craziness of this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this would literally be the case, but, to some extent, you got to feel like, Schloss probably looked back at, about the midseason mark and, and I doubt he's thinking too much about A&M right now because his team's having a great season. But, if you're looking ahead at the schedule, obviously, whether you're A&M or whether you're Earley or whether you're Jim, like you're looking forward to the A&M Texas series, but in a way it's kind of like, here we go. And I think if you're Jim and that staff, if you would have looked at A&M at the midseason mark, you're like, okay, like those guys are going to come here. They're going to be scuffling. They're going to be doubting themselves. Like, okay, that's about the best case scenario we can think of. Now it's kind of like the worst case scenario you could think of if you're those guys, because you've got A&M rolling there with a full head of steam, and Jared Spencer, unfortunately, I've loved the job that he's done in the Friday spot for UT this year. He's out for the weekend, probably out for the year for them. Which would be a pretty tough blow. But, I mean, you're going to a weekend without your Friday starter. You're having to reshuffle your whole pitching staff. Meanwhile, A&M thinks they're back to kind of being that number one national championship type of team. And that's a scary combo. So I just think if you look at all those different variables going into the weekend, obviously I would think A&M would have a pretty significant crowd over in Austin. I think a lot of people bought tickets earlier in the year. It's going to be a lot of fun. It is good as it gets for a regular season college baseball series. And here's the other thing. We don't even talk about this because of the Schloss element, but this is the first series that A&M and Texas have played as members of the Southeastern Conference, and the first series they've played since A&M left the Big 12. And we're not even really talking about that because of the Schloss element.
How much – all right, who's it going to be more emotional for? And maybe emotional is not the right word, because I think emotional maybe for the A&M fans and the players, right? but like how much emotion or drama is going to be in the Texas mindset as the number one team, as all these eyeballs on this, and Schloss going against his former team. And that's got to be hard for him because I'm sure it was hard when they took on TCU at A&M, right? And then conversely, the A&M point of view of, hey, some of those guys probably have a good relationship with him, but he left them. He left them, and he left his entire program. So emotionally, is Schloss up against it? Is A&M up against it? Are they both up against it?
I think they both are to some degree. And, I'd even throw Earley in the mix. I mean, let's not forget how much he was kind of thrown in that drama as well. But, I mean, I think they're both up against a little bit. I kind of look back at Bronny's interview with Shaw yesterday, and, he kind of asked about the Texas series. And, Shaw didn't tip his hand too much. But, I thought it was funny when he kind of said, yeah, it's just another series. And he just kind of like glared at Bronny. And it's just kind of like that. I kind of feel like that's the mindset a little bit. It's kind of like, hey, this is all business, but there's a personal element here. And I'll say this about Jim, too. Knowing how competitive of a person he is, there's zero question that his decision to leave A&M had nothing to do with those players. So I don't think there's one, I think there is an element of him where he hates playing those players. There's also an element of him where, that was a nasty split, and he's certainly well documented some of the phone calls and stuff like that he's gotten. So I'm sure, as odd as it is, like he wants to be at A&M more than anybody else. So it's just a lot of really competitive people playing the game of baseball, and potentially the biggest series of the year in college baseball. It's going to be pretty, I don't know if chippy would be the right word. I always kind of I always try to underrate the chippiness because, like, as much as a rivalry as it is, all these kids know each other. Like, they literally, like, play with each other in travel ball. They're playing each other in high school baseball. Like, I don't think it's really the players that are going to be chippy. I think it's kind of more so in the stands.
How maroon do you think it's going to feel at the Dish?
How many A&M fans I think will be there?
Yeah, I mean, because it's been rowdy before.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say A&M will have about 1,000, maybe 800 people there. I mean, it all depends on how many people bought tickets early on. But, I've gone back and forth in the series. It's just really hard to pick against Texas at home just because, I mean, every single time they've had somebody go down, they've had somebody step up, and they play a really good brand of baseball. But, I mean, there's no doubt, man, when you look at just the way A&M's playing right now, you've got your bullpen pieces starting to come together with Weston Moss. I mean, Luke Jackson grew up a lot, I thought, last weekend in Fayetteville. And this offense, I mean, when TK is hitting a home run for you, that means things are going right.
Who are some of the other hot teams? I know Texas is obviously hot. A&M is obviously hot. Who are some of the other teams we need to pay attention to? I think Florida State's had a good run recently.
Yeah, they were a team that, a couple of weeks ago really struggled, but they've kind of regained their footing a little bit. Joey Vellini and Jamie Arnold have gotten back to pitching really well. Clemson, shut out Georgia last night. They have yet to lose a series this year. So, they're on quite a heater right now. Vanderbilt, yeah, a team, again, A&M would love to go back and play Vanderbilt and Alabama again, given how close a couple of those games were. But, Vandy sweeps Georgia over the weekend. Georgia, by the way, offensively really starting to scuffle. They've got OU at home this weekend. Out west, a couple of teams I got my eye on. Oregon State riding a 12-game streak. They play the Ducks this weekend. Oregon coming off a series win over UCLA last weekend, so that's a really intriguing series there in that state. And then in terms of other teams, I know they lost last night, but I continue to really like West Virginia. I think they're very offensive. Pitching can be a little up and down, but that's a really good baseball team.
Kendall, appreciate your time, brother. Take care.
You got it, man. See ya.